Some people use cruelty like a scalpel. Precise, deliberate, designed to cut in exactly the right place. Priya Nolan had been practicing that kind of precision for years. She was very, very good at it. She just had no idea who she was practicing on. My name is Kelvin Jackson, 62 years old, retired commercial real estate developer. Atlanta, Georgia, Cascade Heights, Southwest Side, a neighborhood people used to write off until men like me arrived and stopped letting them. I drive a 10-year-old Lexus. I maintain the way I maintain everything. Quietly, without apology, and for a lot longer than most people think is reasonable. I live in a house I bought with my wife Denise back in 1994, in a neighborhood that has grown into something beautiful over 30 years, and so has everything else in my life that I refuse to give up on, including my daughter. Maya was 29 years old, brilliant in the way that makes other brilliant people recalibrate the moment she opens her mouth. She had spent the last 7 months working as a personal assistant inside the Buckhead estate of Priya Nolan, wife of billionaire Raymond Nolan, founder of Nolan Meridian Group, a private equity firm in a glass tower on Peachtree Road that I'd driven past 100 times and never had a reason to go into. The Nolans lived behind a security gate, on a private road off West Paces Ferry Road, in a house that had 7 bedrooms, a wine cellar, and a household staff of 4. Maya was one of them. She managed Priya's schedule, her dry cleaning, her dinner reservations, her correspondence, and a continuous rotation of small errands that Priya handed out the way other people hand out pleasantries, reflexively, without looking. I didn't love it, but Maya was 29, not 9, and she'd been clear with me from the beginning. "Dad, I know what I'm doing," she'd said when she took the position. "There's a purpose to this. I need to understand how these households operate from the inside." I had learned over 29 years that Maya's instincts were worth trusting. So I kept my mouth shut. Mostly. The first Wednesday of November, Maya called me after work. I was in my study with a book I wasn't fully concentrating on, which is how I always read when something is already taking up space in my head without my permission. She sounded careful. That specific brand of careful she uses when something is sitting wrong and she hasn't decided whether to say it. "She invited me to the gala," Maya said. I set the book down. "What gala?" "The Harrington Charitable Gala. Biggest event on the Atlanta social calendar. They hold it every November at the Harrington Grand Ballroom on Peachtree. 40 floors up, glass walls. The whole thing. Every name that matters in Atlanta is there." "Priya told me today," Maya continued. "She made this whole production of it. Said she decided to give me a ticket. Tickets are $8,000 each. She wanted me to know that. Very specifically wanted me to know that." A pause. "Then she told me to wear whatever I had." I sat still for a moment. 4 words. Wear whatever you have. 4 words that were not an invitation. They were a setup. Were her friends there when she said this? A beat. Yeah. Jade and Skylar. They were in the walk-in closet. She called me to the doorway. Staged. Called to the doorway, so they had sightlines. Did they laugh? "I heard them in the hallway after," Maya said, her voice precisely level. "I couldn't catch everything, but yeah." I breathed in, out. "What did you do?" "Kept folding the cashmere throw I was working on," she said. "I didn't give them anything. That's my daughter. I'm not sure where she learned that. From me or from her mother. Either way, it held, and I was proud of it." "Are you going to go?" I asked. "I wasn't planning to. I don't have anything appropriate for a gala like that, and I'm not going to show up looking like..." "Maya, Dad, you're going." Silence. "I'll handle the rest," I said. "You just show up." "What does handle the rest mean?" "It means what it means. Get some rest. I'll call you Thursday." I hung up, sat in my chair for a moment. Then I picked up a different phone. I called my wife. "Now, here is what you need to understand about Denise Jackson, because without understanding Denise, you cannot understand what happened next, or why Priya Nolan was about to have the worst Saturday of her very comfortable life." Denise Jackson was 60 years old, originally from Sydney, Australia, and had been building one of the most respected independent fashion design houses in the United States for the last 22 years. Denise Jackson's studio, headquarters in Atlanta's West Midtown Arts District, with a secondary atelier in New York and a Paris relationship she had built over 15 years of showing at private runway events for the kind of buyers and editors who didn't attend the public weeks. She did not advertise. She did not pursue celebrity placements. Her work had appeared on Grammy stages and diplomatic dinners and royal events on 3 continents, not because she chased those rooms, but because the people in those rooms came looking for her. I met Denise in 1989 at a dinner party in Atlanta I almost didn't attend. She was 23 years old, fresh from a degree in textile design at Howard University, already making pieces out of a shared studio space she rented with 2 other designers. She was wearing something she'd made herself. I didn't know that yet, but I found out later. And she was the most interesting person in the room. She has remained the most interesting person in every room since then. We married in 1992. Maya was born in 1995. Maya grew up inside her mother's studio. Fabric samples on every surface, sketch pads everywhere. The organized chaos of a woman pouring vision into material form, with absolute precision. Maya had absorbed all of it. She just chose to build something different with it. Or so everyone thought. When I called Denise that Wednesday evening, I gave her the whole account. The gala, the staged invitation. Wear whatever you have, the laughter in the hallway. Denise listened without interrupting, the way she always does when she's already thinking 3 steps ahead. When I finished, there was a silence of about 4 seconds. Then, "What's the gala date?" "First Saturday of November," I said. "That's 11 days." "I know." Another silence. "Do you know what Maya's measurements are right now?" "I'll get them," I said. "Good." Her voice had shifted into the particular register it uses when a creative decision has been made, and what remains is execution. "I'll need 4 days for the primary build and 2 for finish work. Don't tell her anything. I want to see her face." I smiled into the phone. 33 years, and that woman still moves faster than anyone I know. Here is what Priya Nolan did not know about the young woman managing her household. Maya had not always been a personal assistant. 3 years before she took the Nolan position, Maya had been the creative director at a growing Atlanta marketing consultancy, building brand campaigns for mid-sized companies that needed someone who could translate complex business identity into language real people responded to. She was good. She was better than good. She had a name in Atlanta's professional community, a client list she'd built from scratch, and an offer from a larger firm in New York that she had turned down. She turned it down because she'd made a decision, the kind that takes more courage than it looks like from the outside. She wanted to understand something she couldn't learn at a desk. She wanted to know what it meant to move through the world without a title preceding her, without a reputation smoothing the path. She wanted to know who she was when the professional infrastructure was stripped away. So she took the placement agency position, moved into a midtown apartment with secondhand furniture, learned what it felt like to be invisible to people who had decided that was all she was. She was going to finish the year. Then Priya had stood in that doorway with that smile, and everything had changed. After the call with Maya, I drove to Denise's studio in West Midtown the next morning. The Denise Jackson studio occupied the ground floor and second floor of a converted warehouse on Huff Road. Exposed brick, 14-foot ceilings, bolts of fabric sorted by weight and color along an entire wall that Maya used to run her hands along as a child, like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Denise was already at her drafting table when I arrived, pencil moving fast. She looked up. "I need her measurements," she said, before I'd fully closed the door. "And I need to know her coloring, what she looks like in the November light, not the summer light. Colors behave differently." "Deep blue," I said. "She's always been deep blue." Denise looked at me for a moment. Then she wrote something in the margin of the sketch. "I know," she said. "I dressed her for 24 years before you had to tell me." I sat down in the chair by the window, the one that's been there since 1999 and which I have sat in during more meaningful conversations than I can count. "What are you building?" "Something architectural," she said, not looking up. "The gala is black tie, ballroom scale. The room is the context. The dress has to know that." A pause. "And I'm resetting the stones from the closing piece. The original setting was designed for a runway. The scale is wrong for a ballroom. I want her to have something new. I looked at her. That piece has never left the studio. Go get me the measurements. That's my wife, 33 years, and she has never once needed more than 30 seconds to make a decision that matters. I got Maya's measurements through her friend Tanya, who shared an apartment building with her in Midtown, and who could be trusted to ask casually about something without tipping her hand. By Thursday afternoon, I had what Denise needed. I also called Arthur Sims. Arthur had a private jewelry studio on West Paces Ferry Road in Buckhead. 38 years in business, a client list he never discussed, and the kind of craftsmanship that came from 4 decades of handling things that mattered. I'd known Arthur since 2001 when I was developing a mixed-use property in Buckhead and gave him a long-term lease at a fair rate because his presence was worth more to the building than anything I could have extracted in rent. He'd been my friend since. I walked through his door Thursday afternoon. He looked up from his workbench. Kelvin Jackson. He set his loupe down. You look too calm for someone who walked in here on purpose. I'm always calm, I said. That's exactly what concerns me. He came around the counter. We shook hands. Sit, tell me. I told him everything. Priya Nolan, the gala, the staged invitation, the laughter in the hallway. Arthur listened. When I finished, he folded his hands. What does Denise say? She's building the dress herself, I said. Arthur was quiet. He picked up his pencil, started sketching without being asked. Give me 4 days, he said. I did not tell Maya any of this. She called me Friday morning, still uncertain. Dad, I've been thinking about the gala. Don't overthink it, I said. I'll be at your apartment Friday evening with something. Just have the evening free. What does something mean? It means what it means. You're doing the thing where you tell me nothing and expect me to be fine with it. I'm doing the thing where I handle it, I said. There's a difference. She made a sound that means she disagrees but doesn't have enough information to argue yet. 29 years old and she still makes the exact same sound she made at 9. Some things don't change. Thank God for that. The dress arrived at my house Friday afternoon. Not by courier van, but by Denise's studio manager, a composed young woman named Josephine, who carried it in a sealed garment case like it was made of something that hadn't been invented yet, which, if you know Denise's work, is not entirely inaccurate. Denise had built it in 6 days. Ivory silk, not white. Ivory, the kind of color that exists differently in different light. And knows it. Thousands of hand-stitched glass beads running from the neckline to the floor in cascading lines. The cut architectural and precise in the way that Denise's work always was. Structured through the bodice. Perfect through the shoulder. A neckline that needed nothing added to it. The kind of piece that a room responds to before anyone in it has understood why. Arthur's new earring setting arrived an hour later. Drop design. The stones suspended in white gold. In a way that moved when you turned your head, caught light from angles the original setting had never reached. He'd left a note. Tell Denise I went architectural. She'll know what that means. I hung the garment case on the back of my study door and looked at it for a while. Then I wrote the note. I am not a man who writes things easily. Numbers, structure, timelines, those are my language. But some moments require words, and this one had been building for 29 years. I kept it short. Maya, your mother made this. Not for a runway, not for a museum. For you, for this room, for this night. The stones are Arthur's new setting. Your mother told him to go architectural, and he understood exactly what she meant. Walk in there, and let them figure out who you are. They won't get there. That's the point. We love you more than you will ever fully calculate. Dad. I drove to her apartment Friday evening. She came to the door in jeans and a pencil behind her ear. Dad. She looked at the garment case. What is that? Something for tomorrow, I said. She studied it. Then me. Dad. What did you do? Let yourself in, I said. Hang it on the closet door. Open the box on your dresser first. She did. She lifted the lid of Arthur's box. She went completely still. The earrings caught the apartment light and threw it back in 4 directions. These are... She stopped. Started again. Did Mom? Read the note in the garment case, I said. After I leave. Her hand was over her mouth. I kissed her on the forehead. Wear whatever you have, I said quietly. She looked at me. Something moved across her face. Recognition. And then something that wasn't quite a smile but was in the same family. I let myself out. I drove home through Friday night Atlanta traffic. Radio off. I didn't need it. I didn't know yet exactly how the next evening would unfold, but I knew my daughter. And I knew that when those two forces pointed in the same direction, the room they were pointed at had no idea what was coming. If you've been listening for a while and want accounts like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So thank you. The Harrington Charitable Gala was held on the first Saturday of November at the Harrington Grand Ballroom on Peachtree Street in downtown Atlanta. 40 stories up, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, overlooking the city. A venue where the flowers on the tables cost more than most people's monthly car payments, and no one in the room had noticed that in years. I was not there. That was intentional. My job was done. I had made the calls, arranged the pieces, stepped back. That's how real estate works. You build the structure, hand over the keys, and let it do what it was designed to do. The same principle applies to most things worth doing. I spent that Saturday evening at home in Cascade Heights with Denise. She'd come over at 6. She lived with me, but she'd been at the studio all week, and arriving at home felt like arriving the way it always does when two people have been married long enough that presence is its own event. She made Wagyu beef. I opened a bottle of red wine. We sat at the kitchen table and talked about everything except the gala, because there was nothing left to say about it. The work was done. The rest was Maya's. At 9:17, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Maya. People keep asking who I am. Denise read it over my shoulder. She set her wine glass down very carefully, which is what she does when she's feeling something she doesn't want to spill. Good, I wrote back. Keep walking. Denise picked her glass back up, said nothing for a moment. Then, she's wearing it right. She always does, I said. We went back to the Wagyu beef. What happened at the Harrington Grand that evening, I know from Maya herself. Told at my kitchen table the following morning, with Denise beside me and 3 cups of coffee between us, in the animated, slightly disbelieving tone of someone who is still processing what their own life just did. She arrived at 7:50. The dress moved the way Denise had designed it to move. The silk caught the lobby light first. The glass beads came alive under the ballroom chandeliers. And Arthur's earring setting did exactly what he'd told me it would do. Threw light from across the room before anyone had consciously registered where it was coming from. Maya told us she'd been aware, walking through the entrance, that something in the room was reorganizing itself around her arrival. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the way a space adjusts when something enters it that it wasn't quite expecting. At the registration table, the young woman behind it looked up, took in the full picture, and asked whether she was with the Nolan household table or a partner firm. Household staff, Maya said. Personal assistant to Mrs. Nolan. The young woman said of course, in the tone of someone who had just been handed a sentence that did not match the image in front of her and had decided not to pursue the contradiction. Priya had placed Maya at a table near the back of the room, standard positioning for household employees who received tickets as gestures rather than genuine invitations. Maya found her seat, ordered sparkling water, sat down with the composure of someone who had been raised by 2 people for whom composure was a non-negotiable. She didn't know it yet, but 3 tables away, Priya Nolan had noticed her within 4 minutes of her arrival. And the noticing was not going as planned. Here is what you need to understand about Priya Nolan, because without understanding her, you cannot understand why this particular evening hit her the way it did. Priya was not a stupid woman. She had sharp social intelligence. She read rooms, read people, understood power and appearance the way some people understand a second language, fluently, instinctively, without having to think about the grammar. That intelligence was real, and it had served her well. The problem was that she had never once applied it honestly to anyone she had placed in the category of staff. Those people were furniture. They registered as objects in the room, not as subjects with interior lives and histories she didn't know about. The category was permanent. In Priya's architecture, you didn't move out of it. You were assigned to it, and it held. So when Maya walked into the Harrington Grand Ballroom that Saturday evening, Priya's eyes caught her, because Priya's eyes caught everything. And then something unusual happened. The image didn't match the file. She knew it was Maya. She could see it was Maya, but the Maya in her file was a household employee in serviceable clothes who had been handed an $8,000 ticket she couldn't survive. And the woman moving through that ballroom in ivory silk and architectural diamonds was doing something that category didn't allow for. She was commanding the room's attention without trying. Priya leaned over to Jade. Jade looked toward Maya. Jade shrugged. Priya looked again. Harder. Jade looked again. This time Jade didn't shrug. This time Jade said something Maya told us she didn't catch. But whatever it was, it made Priya look a third time. I didn't know it yet, but the story Priya had written about that evening was already falling apart, and she was the only one in the room who knew it. At 8:20, a man Maya had never met approached her table. Mid-50s. Silver at the temples. The steady bearing of someone who had spent decades making significant decisions and had stopped needing external confirmation that they were right. He introduced himself as Dale Whitfield, a senior partner at an investment advisory firm that had worked with the Nolan Group for 11 years. He sat down across from her the way people in those rooms sit, directly, without preamble. "You're not an attorney," he said. "A statement personal assistant to Mrs. Nolan," Maya said. He looked genuinely surprised. Not performed surprise, actual recalibration happening behind his eyes. "How long?" 7 months. "And before that?" She told him. The creative director work, the consultancy, the deliberate step back. She didn't give him the full architecture of it. She gave him the honest version, which in those rooms is often more disarming than any credential. Dale Whitfield listened the way people listen when they've stopped waiting to speak. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he took a card from his inside pocket and placed it on the table with 2 fingers. "When you're ready to have a professional conversation," he said, "I'd like to be in it." He stood, nodded, and moved on. Maya pocketed the card. "She texted me at 9:17. I told her to keep walking." Priya came to her at 9:45. "Maya told us this part slowly. The way you tell a story you want to get exactly right, because you know you're only going to tell it once, and you need it to land." She was standing at the window wall. Atlanta spread below her 40 floors down, the city doing what Atlanta does on a Saturday night in November, which is burn gold and copper through the dark like it has something to prove. She was on her second sparkling water, watching the city, when she became aware of a presence to her left. She turned. Priya Nolan stood there in black, tailored, understated, the kind of outfit that announces I stopped having to prove anything years ago and now I dress to confirm it. Her expression was not the face she wore with household staff. It wasn't managed warmth or the efficient pleasantness of a woman handling an obligation. It was the face she wore with people she wasn't sure about yet. "You look wonderful tonight," Priya said. "Thank you," Maya said. A pause. "I don't think I've seen you at the gala before." "First time," Maya said. Priya's eyes moved. The earrings first, then the gown, the neckline, the way the silk moved, the inventory of someone who knew what things cost and was trying to solve an equation that wasn't adding up. Then her eyes came back to Maya's face. "Who made the dress?" Direct. No softening around it. When you run at the level Priya ran at, you simply ask. Maya smiled. "My mother," she said. Priya went very still. "Your mother. She has a design house," Maya said. "Denise Jackson Studio. She's based here in Atlanta." Something shifted in Priya's expression. The quiet internal rearrangement of a woman whose mental file on a person has just been retrieved and found to be catastrophically incomplete. "I know that studio," Priya said, carefully. "The way you say something when you're buying yourself 3 seconds to process. I've known that name for years. I tried to get a piece from that collection for a gala 3 years ago. I was told there was a 4-year wait list." "There is," Maya said. "My mother doesn't rush for anyone." Then at the dress. Then back at Maya. "This is the closing piece," Priya said, very quiet, "from the Milan collection." "Yes," Maya said. "That piece was never for sale." No, Maya said. It wasn't. The silence between them lasted perhaps 4 seconds. In that silence, Priya Nolan was doing mathematics, the kind that had nothing to do with numbers. She was recalculating 7 months of assumptions, 7 months of a story she had built about a woman she had looked at without seeing. Your mother sent this tonight, Priya said. For you. My parents arranged it together, Maya said. My father made a few calls. My mother made the dress. Priya looked at her. Really looked, the way she had stopped looking at people she'd put in permanent categories. I invited you, she said slowly, thinking you'd. I know what you thought, Maya said. Warm. No sharpness in it. No performance of forgiveness either. Just honesty. Delivered without drama. I think you know that I know. Priya's jaw moved slightly. A woman accustomed to controlling every room she entered, standing in one that had quietly gotten away from her. I'm glad you came, she said finally. And Maya told me, this is the part that stayed with me. It wasn't managed. It wasn't the careful warmth of a woman handling a social situation. It was the genuine response of someone confronting a reckoning they hadn't planned for and finding, to their own surprise, that they weren't entirely hostile to it. So am I, Maya said. Something moved across Priya's face. Maya described it carefully, looking for the exact word. It looked like the beginning of respect, she said. Not the full thing, the beginning. Maya stayed until 10:30. Spoke to 12 people she'd never met, exchanged contact information with 7 of them, walked out of the Harrington Grand the way she had walked in. Alone. Unhurried. In no one's debt. She was at my kitchen table by 9 the next morning. Denise was already there. She'd stayed over, the way she did on the nights when Atlanta traffic wasn't worth the drive back, and the morning felt worth being present for. 3 cups of coffee. Sunday light coming through the kitchen window. The oak tree in the backyard catching the November wind. Maya sat down and looked at both of us. You two planned this together, she said. Not a question. We plan most things together, Denise said. That's the advantage of 33 years. Mom. Maya's voice changed. The ivory dress. Don't, Denise said gently. That dress was never supposed to leave the studio. It was always supposed to leave the studio, Denise said. I just hadn't found the right reason yet. Maya looked at her mother for a long moment, the particular look of a daughter who was feeling something too large for the kitchen table, and is trying to decide what to do with it. A museum in Amsterdam wanted that dress, Maya said. I know, Denise said. I told them no. Why? I wanted to see it move. She looked at Maya steadily. Now I've seen it move. The kitchen was quiet for a moment. Then Maya said, she knew the dress. Priya Nolan. She knew it was the closing piece from the Milan collection. Denise nodded slowly. She would. She moves in those rooms. She said she tried to get a piece from that collection 3 years ago. She did, Denise said. My studio manager handled the correspondence. We told her there was a wait list. Maya stared at her. There is a wait list. There is, Denise agreed. She's on it. A pause. At the back. Not distress. Something closer to amazed. Helpless laughter. Mom, I don't reward rudeness, Denise said simply. I never have. You knew who she was before any of this? I knew her name, Denise said. I knew how her household was managed. Word travels in Atlanta, Maya. It always has. I let them have the moment. Sometimes the best thing a father can do is sit at the table and drink his coffee and be grateful that his family is extraordinary. Dad, Maya said eventually, looking at me. Yeah. The note said you both love me more than I can calculate. That's accurate information, I said. You've never written that down before. I've been saying it your whole life, I said. I just had to write it down for you to hear it. She looked at her mother, then at me. The morning came through the window. Cascade Heights on a November Sunday. Quiet in the particular way Sundays are quiet when something good has just finished settling into place. Are you going to tell me what any of this cost? She asked. No, I said. Are you going to tell me anything useful? Keep Dale Whitfield's card, I said. He's someone worth knowing when you're ready. When I'm ready for what? You have been for 7 months. I've been waiting for you to say it out loud. She went quiet, looked at the coffee cup in her hands. Then, I have 40 pages of notes. I know, I said. You don't know what they say. I know they exist, I said. That's enough. 3 weeks later, Priya Nolan came to Maya's apartment. Maya called me afterward from the parking lot of a coffee shop in Midtown. The way she calls when something has just happened that she needs to put somewhere before it gets away from her. She came to say goodbye, Maya said. No designer anything. Jeans and a coat. She looked different, like she'd been carrying something heavy for a while and had finally figured out it wasn't load-bearing. What did she say? She said she knew I was leaving. A pause. And she wanted to do it right this time. Maya had been planning to give notice at the end of the month. She hadn't said anything to Priya yet. The fact that Priya knew told Maya something. That Priya had been paying closer attention than 7 months of careful invisibility had suggested. She walked into the apartment and looked around, Maya said. The second-hand furniture, the one plant, the stacked boxes. And she said, "You really lived like this?" The whole time, like it was something that had required courage instead of just a choice. What did you tell her? I told her that was the point, that I needed to understand what it felt like to move through the world without a name doing the work ahead of me. A breath. She asked what it taught me. What did you say? That dignity doesn't come from the outside. That the people I know from my old professional world move through life assuming they deserve to take up space because they've always been confirmed in it. And that assumption goes untested when the world keeps confirming it. She paused. I told her I spent 7 months learning that I still knew who I was when the external confirmation was gone. That was the real question. That's what I went looking for. Outside my study window, the November oak was bare now, 30 feet tall against a gray Atlanta sky. Did she hear you? I think so, Maya said. She said she'd been doing things differently since the gala, small things. Noticing how she talked to people she decided didn't matter. A beat. She said she had a lot of noticing to do. Did she mean it? I don't think it's complete. I think it's the beginning. But I've watched enough people decide to change to know what the first real step looks like. It looks uncomfortable. She looked uncomfortable. I nodded to myself. That's right, I said. The discomfort is the work. Here is what Maya had actually been building in those 40 pages of notes. She called it Visible Ground, a consulting framework for organizations whose operations depended heavily on domestic and service workers, household staff, personal assistants, event workers, hospitality employees, who were systematically invisible to the people running those organizations. The premise was straightforward, and like most straightforward premises, it described something true that everyone had always known and no one had done anything about. Most organizations didn't know who their service workers were, not in any meaningful sense. They knew job titles, hourly rates, task lists. They didn't know histories, capabilities, professional backgrounds, ambitions. They had built operational structures on a labor force they had never once thought to look at. That was a structural blindness. And structural blindness in Maya's professional vocabulary was a problem with a solution. Visible Ground had 3 components. First, an organizational assessment process that mapped the full capability profile of service and domestic staff. What they'd done before this role. What they were capable of. What organizational knowledge they held that no one had ever asked about. Second, a training curriculum for household managers and executives on what unconscious status assumptions cost organizations in talent, institutional knowledge, and basic human dignity. Third, a direct advocacy arm that connected domestic and service workers with professional development resources, legal literacy education, and advancement pathways they were rarely told existed. She'd been building it in her lunch breaks at the Nolan estate, during the drives between dry cleaning pickups, in the margins of the schedule sheets she prepared every morning. 7 months of careful observation channeled into 40 pages that were going to become something real. Dale Whitfield called her 8 days after she sent him a summary. I want to hear more, he said. When can we meet? They met at a restaurant in Buckhead the following Thursday, the kind of place that required a relationship to get into on short notice. which Maya managed because she had spent 3 decades watching me navigate Atlanta's professional geography and had absorbed more than she'd ever acknowledged. She brought the 40 pages. Dale brought a colleague, a woman named Sandra Park, who ran a workforce development nonprofit with offices in Atlanta and Chicago. The conversation lasted 2.5 hours. By the end of it, Dale and Sandra were discussing a consulting agreement and a funding commitment to build out the first phase of Visible Ground properly. Not charity, an investment. Dale's framing, which Maya told me she'd appreciated, this is a market gap with a human cost. Those are the most durable problems to solve. Maya called me from the parking lot. Dad. Yeah. He said he came over to my table at the gala because he'd been watching Priya watch me for 45 minutes and couldn't figure out the dynamic. I didn't say anything. He said, and I'm quoting him, "I've been in this business 26 years. When someone in that position watches someone in your position that intently and can't hide it, there's always a reason worth understanding." And he asked me to explain what I was going to do with it. A pause. So I told him. Good, I said. And now we're doing it. Her voice had that particular quality, the steady forward momentum of someone who has just made a decision they're not going to second guess. Dad, tell Mom. She'll want to see the 40 pages, I said. I'll send them tonight. She'll have notes by morning. I know, Maya said, and I could hear the smile in it. She always does. I called Denise that evening. She was in the studio. She's always in the studio, late evenings when the city quiets down and the work clarifies. I told her about Dale, about Sandra Park, about the 2.5 hour conversation, about the funding commitment. Denise was quiet for a moment. Does she have a name for it? Visible Ground, I said. Another pause. That's a good name. I thought so. Kelvin. Her voice shifted into the register it uses when she's going to say something she's been holding for a while. Do you remember when she was 4 years old and she walked into the studio for the first time and went straight to the fabric wall and stood there for 20 minutes just running her hands along the bolts, not touching anything with purpose? Just feeling everything. I remember, I said. I used to think she was going to be a designer, Denise said. But I was wrong. She wasn't feeling the fabric. She was learning the room. Learning how to read material, what it's made of, what it can do, what it's hiding. A breath. She's been reading rooms her whole life. She just applied it somewhere I didn't expect. I sat with that for a long moment. She's her mother's daughter, I said. She's her father's too, Denise said. The patience is yours. The reading is mine. That's both of us. Denise laughed. The real kind, the one that comes from somewhere deep and certain. Send her the studio, I said. When she's ready to launch, use the West Midtown space for the first event. It's big enough and the address says something. I was already planning to, Denise said. Of course she was. There is one more thing I want to tell you, and then I'm going to let this story rest. 6 weeks after the gala, the Invisible Line collection launched. That was the name Denise had given to the body of work she'd been developing for the better part of a year. A collection built around a single premise. Every piece had been designed in direct collaboration with domestic and service workers, women and men who had spent careers making wealthy lives possible without being credited for any of it. The collection told their stories in fabric and form. A portion of every sale went into a scholarship fund for their children. The launch event was held at the Denise Jackson Studio in West Midtown. The guest list included fashion editors, collectors, artists, and buyers from 3 continents. But in the front 2 rows, 50 seats had been reserved. 50 people who had never attended a fashion event in their lives. Housekeepers, personal assistants, hospital orderlies, event staff. All of them dressed for the evening in pieces from the new collection, chosen and fitted by Denise and her team in the weeks before the launch. I sat in the back, next to Arthur Sims, who had come because Denise asked him and because he'd never missed anything important in 38 years and wasn't going to start now. Maya stood backstage through the show. I caught a glimpse of her through the curtain gap between the second and third looks, watching the front 2 rows, watching the faces of the women and men who had never sat in a front row before, watching the way Denise's work, built from their stories, moved past them on the runway. Some of them had their hands pressed to their mouths. One woman, a housekeeper from Decatur who had worked the same household for 19 years, was quietly crying. Denise appeared at her shoulder, took her hand without speaking, and stood there with her while the show moved forward. Arthur watched all of this and said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, to me, "You have a remarkable family, Kelvin." "I know," I said. "Denise built that collection in 8 months. She builds fast when the reason is right," I said. "And Maya," he gestured at the curtain, where Maya was still watching the front rows. "She's going to do something with that organization of hers." "I know," I said. "How do you know?" I watched my daughter through the gap in the curtain, watching the room with the same expression she'd had at 4 years old, standing at her mother's fabric wall, reading everything. "Because she's been building it for 7 months without telling anyone," I said. "In an employer's house, on lunch breaks, in margins of schedule sheets." I watched her. The people who build things quietly, without an audience, are always the ones who finish them. Arthur nodded slowly, like a man who puts money in an account in 2003 and doesn't touch it for 20 years. I looked at him. "I never told you about that account." "No," he agreed. "You didn't need to." He picked up his program. "You're all the same. You just express it differently." Somewhere in the crowd that evening, Maya told me later, she spotted a face she hadn't expected. Priya Nolan, standing near the back wall, holding her champagne glass with both hands, looking at the exhibition panels Denise had installed along the perimeter. Photographs of domestic workers from 11 states, each one captioned with their name, their years of service, their dream for their children. Priya had been looking at one panel for a long time when Maya walked over. "You came," Maya said. Priya turned. Her eyes were red at the edges. "I needed to see it." She gestured at the room, the front row women still talking with each other. "The collection, the photographs. I needed to see what you built, from what I tried to break." Maya stood beside her and looked at the panel Priya had been studying. A photograph of a woman in her 50s, a hotel housekeeper for 22 years. The caption read, "She put 3 children through college. None of them know how hard it was." Priya said slowly, "When you walked into that ballroom, I thought you came to destroy me." "I know," Maya said. "You didn't. You could have. You had every reason to, and you didn't." "Destroying you wasn't the point," Maya said. "The point was that the room needed to see what it looks like when you assume someone is less than you, and you're wrong. Not wrong, because she turned out to be somebody famous." She paused. Wrong, because she was always somebody. Before the dress, before the name, she was somebody because she was a person. That's all it takes. Priya looked at her for a long time. Then she nodded, the slow, deliberate nod of someone filing something permanent. They stood side by side in front of the photograph. "She put 3 children through college. None of them know how hard it was. Thank you," Priya said finally, "for not being what I expected. For being someone worth learning from, even when I didn't deserve it." Maya picked up 2 glasses from a passing tray and handed one over. "We're all works in progress," she said. "Every single one of us." They touched glasses. The photograph watched from the wall. "Here is what I keep thinking about. On the quiet evenings at home in Cascade Heights, sitting in the chair by the window where I have sat for 30 years, the world assigns you a story early. It sees you in one context, a job title, a household position, an hourly rate, and it files you under a category and stops looking. Because looking takes effort, and effort implies the other person might matter more than you've accounted for." Priya Nolan looked at my daughter and saw staff. She saw a ceiling, permanent and fixed. She handed her a gala invitation like you release a fish back into the water. Sportsmanlike, she'd probably have said, if pressed. A gesture that cost her nothing because it was designed to cost Maya everything. She did not see a woman who had walked away from professional success voluntarily to test her own character. She did not see 40 pages of notes written in lunch breaks and schedule sheet margins. She did not see a father sitting in Cascade Heights with 20 years of patient investment and a jeweler on speed dial. She did not see a mother in a West Midtown studio who had been holding the world's most beautiful dress for the right occasion. She saw the title and stopped. The antidote to being underestimated is not anger. Anger wants an audience. Anger announces itself, makes noise, gives the other side something to manage. The antidote is excellence, delivered quietly, in a room full of people who didn't see it coming, by a woman in her mother's masterpiece who knew exactly who she was before she walked through the door. Priya Nolan spent that entire evening trying to figure out who Maya Jackson really was. She still doesn't have the full answer. But I do. Denise does. Maya has always had it. She is the daughter of a man who planted seeds in 2003 and waited for exactly the right November. She is the daughter of a woman who built the world's most beautiful dress for a room full of people who assumed they already knew the ending. She is exactly who she has always been. The only thing that changed was the room. And now the room knows it too. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered accounts like this.